Have you ever believed that love could heal everything, only to discover that love itself was the greatest mistake of your life? At a wedding amidst the pine forests of Montana, a vow turned into a blade that severed the fates of three people. This is the story of James Harper, the man who married his own mother, without ever knowing. In the fall of 1998, the town of Missoula was painted gold by maple leaves and a crisp, chilly air. St. Francis Church, small and quaint, was adorned brilliantly for a wedding. White daisies lined the aisle. The scent of pine wood and sunlight streaming through stained glass windows created an almost mythical scene. James Harper, 25 years old, stood before the altar. His dark brown hair was neatly combed, and his eyes lit up every time he glanced toward the door. Today, he would marry Emily Dawson, the woman who made his heart believe in love for the first time. They had met in Seattle a year earlier. Emily, 43, owned a small handicraft stall. James was an antique dealer from Montana. Their connection began with casual business conversations, gradually turning into personal confessions, and before they knew it, they had fallen in love. Despite the age gap, they found in each other something both had lacked their entire lives: understanding. The church doors opened. Emily stepped in, wearing a classic white dress. She was no longer young, but she exuded an elegant, steadfast beauty, as if she had weathered countless storms to stand here today. The organ began to play. They exchanged vows. Their eyes locked on each other as if the rest of the world had faded away. Emily smiled with pure happiness. James took her hand, whispering, "I don't know who you were in a past life, but in this one I know for sure, I belong to you." After the ceremony, a small reception took place by the Clark Fork River. Friends teased James for marrying a woman so wonderful despite being nearly 2 decades older. But he only smiled, squeezed Emily's hand and said, "Age can't measure emotions." As the sun set and the guests began to leave, James's adoptive mother, Clara Harper, called the couple over. She pulled a small, weathered oak box from her coat pocket. "James, this is the keepsake your birth mother left when you were abandoned at the orphanage gate. I've kept it for 20 years, since your father and I adopted you, and now I want you to have it on this special day." James opened the box. Inside was an old silver necklace with a snowflake pendant. Attached was a yellowed piece of paper, the ink faded and smudged. "My son, I'm sorry. Live well." Emily stood behind James. When she saw the necklace, her face turned pale. Her hands dropped to her sides, her eyes wide. The world seemed to tilt. All sounds, every voice, every noise vanished. There was only the silver necklace and the past. James turned around, about to ask something, but froze when he saw Emily standing as still as a statue. She was staring at the keepsake, as if she had just seen the ghost of her own past. In 1973, in the harsh town of Butte, Montana, a place of weathered tin-roofed houses, soot-stained chimneys, and alleys where the wind howled even in May, a young girl named Sarah Miller, who would later become Emily Dawson, struggled through a life that seemed to offer her no other choice. Sarah, 18, had clear blue eyes like the waters of Flathead Lake and long brown hair, often tied back with an old ribbon. She had once dreamed of becoming an elementary school teacher, of leaving Butte behind to step into a world where dreams weren't confined by poverty and domestic violence. But those dreams shattered when she became pregnant at 17, after a fleeting romance with a boy who left without a word. With no money, no support, and living with addicted parents, Sarah gave birth alone in a rundown public hospital. In a pale yellow room reeking of antiseptic and filled with screams, she brought a baby boy into the world. James. She named him in her heart, too afraid to speak it aloud. For 3 days in the hospital, she held him close, never letting go. The baby's eyes were as clear as hers, but each time she looked into them, a piercing question haunted her. How can I give him a better life when I can barely survive my own? On the 4th night, snow began to fall lightly on the rooftops. In the darkness, Sarah wrapped James in a thin woolen blanket, her lips blue from worry and cold. She tucked into his coat the only keepsake she had from her childhood, a silver necklace with a snowflake pendant. the only gift her grandmother had ever given her. With it, she included a handwritten note, trembling with tears. "My son, I'm sorry. Live well." Sarah stepped out of the house, walking through the long alley, crossing 3 blocks to the iron gates of St. Mary's Orphanage in Missoula. No one saw her, only the dim street lamp and the silent snow bore witness. She took a deep breath, placed James at the gate, and kissed his forehead one last time. In that moment, her heart felt as if it had been torn in two. She didn't dare look back. Sarah ran, her worn shoes crunching through the snow, leaving chaotic footprints, like her own state of mind. She knew if she looked back even once, she wouldn't have the strength to leave. After that, Sarah fled Montana. She embarked on a directionless journey, stopping in Seattle, the first big city she found on a map. There she changed her name to Emily Dawson. She worked every job she could find, dishwashing, cleaning, and eventually becoming a seamstress in a small workshop. Her hands grew calloused from needlework, but her heart remained hollow. Emily lived quietly, loving no one, trusting no one. Every night she sat by the window of her 4th-floor apartment, looking down at the street lit by passing cars, and wondered, "Where is my son now? Is someone holding him when he has nightmares? Will he ever forgive me?" She thought of returning to Montana to search for him countless times, but was held back by fear. Fear that he wouldn't remember her, fear of rejection, fear of facing a boy with a sad face and a question she couldn't answer. To survive, she buried the memory of her son deep within her heart, convincing herself that he was better off without her. Emily grew older in solitude, but in 1997, when a tall young man from Missoula walked into her small stall at Pike Place Market, her heart suddenly stirred. She didn't know why that feeling came, only that there was something hauntingly familiar in the young man's eyes. Something she couldn't name, a distant echo of fate reverberating back to her. But the pain of her past was so great that she refused to let herself believe it could be him, until the moment she saw the necklace that shattered her defenses. James spent his early years in the orphanage, where he learned to share and fend for himself. Though the nuns cared for him, he always felt a void he couldn't name. The silver necklace became his constant companion, the only link to the mysterious mother he never knew. At 5 years old, James was adopted by Robert and Clara Harper, a couple who owned a small farm in the Bitterroot Valley, south of Missoula. Robert, a tall man with calloused hands from years of farming, and Clara, a gentle woman with a warm smile, had been married for over a decade, but had no children of their own. They had always longed for a child to share their love and carry on their family legacy. When they first met James at the orphanage, Clara felt an instant connection to the boy with deep blue eyes and soft brown hair. Robert, though less expressive, had a glimmer of hope in his eyes as he looked at James. After completing the adoption process, they officially brought James to their farm and named him James Harper, hoping he would bring joy and new life to their family. Life on the farm was initially challenging for James. From a boy surrounded by peers in the orphanage, he now had to adapt to the vast but lonely expanse of the farm. Robert taught James how to care for livestock, plant crops, and repair farm tools. These tasks helped James grow physically and mentally, forging a strong bond with his adoptive father. Clara, with her gentle nature, was always by James's side, telling him bedtime stories and teaching him to read and write. She noticed his sharp intellect and encouraged him to pursue education. Every evening, under the glow of an oil lamp, the two would read together, sharing thoughts and dreams. Despite the love from his adoptive parents, James couldn't erase the emptiness in his heart. He often sat alone on a grassy hill, gazing at the distant horizon, clutching the silver necklace and wondering about his birth mother. He thought about searching for her countless times, but fear held him back. Fear that the truth might hurt his adoptive parents, or that his birth mother might not want to see him. So he kept his pain buried deep, letting the questions linger unanswered throughout his childhood. At school, James excelled. He particularly loved science and sports, especially basketball. With his height and agility, he quickly became the star of the Bitterroot Valley High School basketball team. The thrilling games and cheers from the crowd helped him temporarily forget the sadness within. But in personal relationships, James kept his distance. He turned down many confessions from girls, not because he lacked feelings, but because of an inner fear. If even his own mother could abandon him, how could he fully trust and love someone else? After graduating high school, James faced a crossroads. Robert hoped he would take over the family farm, while Clara encouraged him to pursue college. James, with a restless spirit and a desire to explore the world beyond, decided to leave the Bitterroot Valley to seek new opportunities. He moved to Missoula and worked at an auto repair shop. There he learned independence, communication skills, and financial management. These experiences helped him mature and better understand himself. One day, while chatting with a customer, James heard about an opportunity to sell antiques in Seattle. The shops there were looking for items from Montana to meet the demands of urban customers. Seeing this as a chance to start a business and explore a new city, James decided to take the leap. When he shared his decision with his adoptive parents, Robert worried about the risks James might face in the big city. He emphasized the stability and safety of staying on the farm. Clara, though also concerned, understood her son's aspirations and supported his choice. The day before he left, Robert gave James an old pocket knife, a symbol of maturity and responsibility. Clara prepared his favorite meals and reminded him to take care of himself. Upon arriving in Seattle, James was captivated by the vibrant energy of Pike Place Market, known for its diverse stalls and bustling crowds. He decided to try his luck there, believing the unique items from Montana would catch the attention of shop owners and customers. After a busy morning, James sold most of his goods to larger stalls, but a few small items remained unsold. As he wandered through the market's narrow aisles, James stumbled upon a small, cozy stall displaying intricately hand-stitched fabrics and artisanal crafts. The stall's owner was a middle-aged woman with golden brown hair tied neatly back and deep blue eyes that held a magnetic allure. She was carefully arranging her goods, exuding a calm and professional air. James approached, feeling an inexplicable urge to strike up a conversation. He spoke gently. "Hi, I'm James Harper from Montana. I have a few antique items left. Would you be interested?" The woman looked up, her eyes flickering with surprise before softening into a friendly smile. "Hi, James. I'm Emily Dawson. Let me take a look at what you've got." James opened his bag, pulling out the remaining items: an old pocket watch, a finely decorated dagger, and a meticulously carved wooden box. Emily examined each piece carefully, her eyes lighting up with appreciation. "These are truly unique," Emily remarked. "I especially love this wooden box. It has a rustic yet refined beauty." James smiled, feeling proud of his selection. "Thank you. I found it at an old farm in Montana. I thought it would suit the style of your stall." Emily nodded in agreement. "You're right. I'll take all of these. They'll complement my collection perfectly." After negotiating the price and completing the transaction, Emily looked at James with a warm gaze. "James, if you come across more items like these in the future, bring them to me. I'm always looking for unique pieces like this." James felt a special connection with Emily, not just from their business deal, but from the warmth and sincerity she radiated. He replied, "Absolutely, Emily. I'll be back with more interesting finds. It's been a pleasure working with you." They exchanged contact information, and James left the stall in high spirits. He couldn't have imagined that this chance encounter would open a new, unexpected chapter in his life. In the weeks that followed, James frequently returned to Seattle, bringing new batches of goods and always stopping by Emily's stall. Their relationship evolved from business partners to close friends. They shared stories about their lives, dreams, and deepest struggles. One evening, Emily shared a piece of her past with James, revealing her birth name, Sarah Miller, though she never mentioned the son she had left behind, the memory too painful to unearth. James spoke of his childhood in the orphanage, his journey to find meaning in life, and the lingering questions about his birth mother that he had buried deep to protect his adoptive parents. Their mutual empathy and understanding brought them closer, and a special bond began to blossom between two souls who seemed so different in age and background. By late 1997, their relationship had deepened into a profound love, and they soon decided to move in together, eager to build a life as one. But fate had woven their paths together in a way neither could have foreseen, as two lonely hearts found solace in each other amidst the bustling currents of life. When they were together, they found peace. James began to love Emily with a quiet but profound affection, a love not born from youthful impulsiveness, but from the feeling of being understood, of being accompanied. Emily, though hesitant due to their age difference, couldn't stop herself from falling for him. She had shared her birth name, Sarah Miller, with James one evening, but the buried memory of the son she had left at St. Mary's Orphanage in Missoula remained too painful to unearth, even when James mentioned his own childhood there, a coincidence she refused to dwell on. One summer evening in 1997, Emily invited James to her home for dinner. Her small house on the outskirts of Seattle exuded the warmth of pine wood, golden lamplight, and handmade crafts she had created herself. That night, James met Olivia, Emily's 22-year-old adopted daughter, who worked as a librarian at the local library. Olivia left an impression with her radiant smile, sharp eyes, and witty remarks about the books she loved. After dinner, Olivia played a classical piece on the piano. The music echoed through the small room, leaving James momentarily transfixed. He had never thought he'd find anything beyond Emily, but Olivia stirred something in him, something gentle, pure, and familiar. Yet James brushed it aside, for his heart still belonged to the older woman who had made him believe in love for the first time in his life. By early 1998, James and Emily had moved into a small house near downtown Seattle, their lives intertwined in quiet happiness. In the spring of 1998, James proposed to Emily at their favorite coffee shop. She nodded through tears. They believed fate had brought them together, to love and to heal the wounds that time had left behind. Though they both knew of St. Mary's Orphanage in Missoula, neither dared to connect the dots. Emily out of fear of her past, and James out of a subconscious desire to protect the love he had found. The couple still planned a fall wedding in Missoula. Olivia began to feel strange stirrings in her heart. She tried to avoid James's gaze, but every time she was near him, her heart skipped a beat. James, too, couldn't deny that being around Olivia felt naturally comforting, without the need to act more mature, as he often did with Emily. Their life seemed peaceful and happy. Mornings spent brewing tea together, evenings choosing antiques, and occasional trips to Missoula to visit James's adoptive parents, Robert and Clara Harper. Their love overcame prejudice, overcame the age gap, but it couldn't overcome the truth waiting at the end of the road. Emily nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. At that moment, they didn't know that the circle of time was slowly closing in. When James brought Emily to Missoula to meet his adoptive parents, the Harpers were shocked. Clara, his adoptive mother, fell silent upon seeing the woman nearly 20 years older than her son. Though she knew the name Sarah Miller, she didn't connect it to Emily, who introduced herself as Emily Dawson, a name that had long replaced the one tied to her painful past. Robert, his stern adoptive father, objected firmly. "What do you think you're doing? What about this family's honor?" James, remaining calm, replied, "I love her. She's my home." After hours of debate, the Harpers relented, not because they agreed, but because James was too determined. They agreed to attend the wedding on the condition of maintaining a polite distance. James and Emily returned to Seattle and began preparing for the wedding. The dress, the flowers, the invitations, everything was chosen with care. Emily, though slightly anxious, believed her past as Sarah Miller was behind her. But James's heart began to stir with restless nights, not from doubting his love, but because Olivia's gaze occasionally flickered in his mind. The wedding took place in early October, in the crisp fall air of Missoula. St. Francis Church was filled with white daisies and the faint scent of pine. James stood before the altar, his eyes shining with hope. Emily, in a classic ivory wedding dress, walked slowly down the aisle, each step heavy with a vague premonition she couldn't name. The ceremony was solemn. Vows were read, rings exchanged. As the priest was about to conclude the ritual, Clara, James's adoptive mother, stepped forward, holding a small box. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Today I want to give my son a keepsake, the only thing left from his birth mother, a woman named Sarah Miller. This is the necklace she left when she abandoned her son at the orphanage gate. She opened the box, revealing the silver necklace with a snowflake pendant. James froze at the name Sarah Miller, a flicker of recognition passing through him. He had heard Emily mention that name once, but the thought was too impossible to entertain. Emily, too, stood frozen. She stumbled back a step, her lips trembling. "That necklace, where did you get it?" Clara, confused, replied, "It came with James when we adopted him." There was a note with it. The name struck Emily like a lightning bolt. She had told James her birth name once, but never imagined it would lead to this moment. Emily collapsed into a chair, her lips quivering. Then, like a suppressed explosion, she stood and screamed, "I'm Sarah! I'm James's mother!" The church fell silent. James stood frozen. Olivia, standing nearby, felt her heart drop. The man she had grown feelings for was her adoptive brother. Her hands trembled, her mind a storm of shock and confusion. But seeing James's pain, she pushed her own turmoil aside to chase after him. James looked at Emily. No, Sarah, the woman he had just married. Images of their first kiss, the necklace, mornings waking up beside her, swirled in his mind like a nightmare. "No, it can't be," James stammered, stepping back, his eyes filled with panic. Emily crumpled, sobbing. "My son, I didn't know. I didn't know you were James. But James couldn't hear more. He shoved the door open and bolted out of the church. Outside, it began to rain, a light drizzle, enough to mask his tears. Olivia ran after him, calling his name. But James had already disappeared into the pine forest, leaving behind a shattered church, stunned gazes, and a woman wailing for a love and a son she had lost for the second time. Missoula, in the days that followed, was cloaked in silence. News of the incestuous wedding spread through the small town like a poisonous wind. James vanished without a trace. Emily locked herself in a hastily rented house, living in solitude, avoiding the judgmental stares of the world. Olivia was the only one who moved between them, a fragile bridge connecting two broken hearts. James took refuge at an abandoned farm in the southern Bitterroot Valley, a place where no one would find him. He lived like a shadow with only nature as a witness to the pain he hid inside. In the mornings, he sat for hours by the icy river, clutching the silver necklace tightly. The same necklace that had once been his only link to his birth mother, Sarah Miller, now revealed to be Emily. In his mind, images of Emily, his lover, now his mother, refused to fade. He no longer knew who he was. Olivia finally found him after nearly a month of searching. She said nothing, simply sitting beside him on the dew-soaked grass. They sat in silence, gazing into the distance, where the sun was rising through the mist. James whispered, "How can you still look at me?" Olivia replied, "You're not at fault. Either of you knew. Love isn't wrong. Fate was just too cruel." Olivia told James about the days Emily spent crying, about the apologies she whispered in her dreams, and about how she had once abandoned everything to search for him, though she didn't know who or how to find him. James buried his face in Olivia's shoulder. He cried, not as the strong man he had been, but as the abandoned child from years ago, now finally knowing who his mother was. A week later, James returned to Missoula. He didn't go to Emily's house but left a short letter. "Mom, I need time, but I don't hate you, and I've never stopped loving you, in whatever way that may be." Emily read the letter through tears. Though James hadn't called her mom in person, she knew the door wasn't fully closed. James settled near the town, reopening his small antique shop. Olivia visited often, helping him reorganize everything. Neither mentioned the past. They talked about books, old items, and the things to come. Their new love wasn't rushed or dazzling, but steady and enduring, like a fire warming a long winter. 3 years after the fateful wedding that shattered hearts, in the spring of 2001, Missoula still held the serene charm of a mountain town. Mornings cloaked in mist, midday bathed in sunlight, and afternoons whispering with the wind through the pine forests. But for James Harper, time didn't pass so gently. Though he outwardly managed his small antique shop near the main market, inside, he was a man piecing together the fragments of his broken self. Emily, the woman who had been his wife, then revealed as his mother, had left Seattle shortly after the incident. She rented a small house near the town, living in seclusion like a ghost, avoiding the gazes of both acquaintances and strangers. She took up sewing for hire, surviving on hands pricked countless times by needles and a heart torn in two. Emily, fearing rejection after the pain she had caused, held back from approaching James directly, choosing instead to send letters on his birthdays, hoping one day he might forgive her. There were no explanations, no justifications, just small stories. "I saw a bird's nest on my windowsill today. I miss you." James read each one, storing them in an old wooden box, but he never replied. Olivia remained the only link between them. She quietly cared for both, not trying to mend things with words but with actions. She worked at an elementary school, occasionally helped James at his shop, and in the evenings brought hot meals to Emily's house. Olivia was the small flame keeping a flicker of warmth alive in this family, though they had never called themselves one. After years of wrestling with his emotions and with Olivia's unwavering support, James finally felt ready to face his mother, wanting to ease her loneliness. There were no tears, no accusations, just two people sitting across from each other in silence. Finally, James spoke softly. "I'm not ready to call you Mom, but I don't want you to keep living in loneliness." Emily's tears fell, not from pain, but from the first opening of a door that had been shut for thousands of nights. From then on, she occasionally came to the shop to help clean and arrange items. They didn't speak much, but the chasm between them was no longer an abyss. James began to notice Olivia's gentle, steadfast presence. She had walked beside him through every heartbreak without ever asking for anything in return. His love for her didn't stem from emptiness, but from the maturity that came after tragedy. One afternoon by the Clark Fork River, James took Olivia's hand and said softly, "I'm not sure I'm a whole person, but if you'll accept someone still learning to love the right way, will you marry me?" Olivia smiled, tears streaming down her face. "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be you." A small wedding was held at the same spot where the reception had taken place years ago, by the Clark Fork River. This time there was no snowflake necklace, no drama, just wildflowers, a gentle breeze, laughter, and sincere promises. Emily sat in the front row, holding a small bouquet Olivia had given her. When James bowed to her, his gaze held not suspicion, but understanding. And for the first time in years, Emily whispered into the wind, "Thank you for giving me another chance." 2 years later, in June 2003, James and Olivia's wooden house hummed with their newborn Lily's babbles as she reached for her grandmother Emily, who arrived with pastries and a knitted dress. Emily was now central to their home. Robert Harper, once stern, had softened since Clara's death from heart disease in 2002. After living in seclusion, he reconnected through James' invitations. At dinner, he and Emily, initially quiet, bonded over tomato plants. Time healed their hearts. Robert visited often, gardening with Emily. One day he asked about her necklace. She nodded. "I keep it to remind me love can mend." Robert, touching her shoulder, said, "You always made me want to be better." His grief eased. Robert saw Emily's strength, and she found in him a companion who understood loss. They married, Emily's second wedding, to her son's adoptive father. For those who'd endured, happiness needed only the right person. James and Olivia smiled, watching love and family reborn. At a cozy dinner, Lily sat on Robert's lap. Emily served James potatoes, and Olivia warned, "Don't burn the pie." Outside, the Bitterroot Valley glowed orange. Inside, laughter warmed the house, soft and lasting, like light after a storm.